Marketing Dividends, presented by the Australian Association of National Advertisers, inspiring responsible, innovative and respected marketing.
I'm James Hier from Wavemaker. Welcome to Marketing Dividends. This month we're in Perth with some of the West's best marketers. We've covered sport, retail and tech. Let's hear a bit about them.
If you've been to Perth this year, it would have been hard for you to miss the new Optus Stadium. This 60,000-seat state-of-the-art venue is home to a wide range of sports teams, matches and concerts. Cash converters began in 1984 when its savvy founders realised there was a gap in the market between pawnbroking and retail. The first store opened in Perth, followed by franchises, and just 6 years later it entered the UK market. 30 years later, and the brand was up and running in more than 700 locations across 21 countries. Cycliq is the manufacturer of the Fly 6, a lightweight, rear-facing bike camera. It was developed in Perth via crowdfunding and is now a global business listed on the ASX. Its founders want to make road cycling safer and believe recording trips will encourage all road users to give each other space and respect.
We've had a fascinating conversation with the Chief Digital Marketing and Product from Cash Converters, the CEO of Optus Stadium and the Executive Chairman of Cycliq. Here's the first part. I'd like to start first with you, Mike. You've gone from marketing to CEO, and that's something that a lot of marketers are struggling to be able to reach. And I'm interested in something that Mark Zuckerberg said about CEOs, and that was you've got to decide what type of CEO you are. He said he's a product CEO. Does that make you a marketing CEO?
I think it makes me a customer CEO. I think I came from a sales background before I got into marketing, and I think that interface you have with the end user customer makes you really conscious of how the customer's needs need to be at the forefront. If you're trying to sell something, you're trying to market something, you're trying to develop a product, you need to understand genuinely what the opportunity is and what the customers are looking for. Doesn't mean you deliver them exactly what they want, but you've got to have that in mind.
Right. And Chris, you're Executive Chairman of Cycliq. It's a sports tech startup. You've come from corporate advisory and change management, and I'm actually trying to work out what is your role in growing this company?
It's a good question. I'm actually originally come from a design background and sort of moved into those other roles that you mentioned. We've got product design that we need to do. It's a category that doesn't exist at the moment, and I've done a number of startups, so fickle hand of fate, I'm in there.
Right. And Alice, I mean, just interesting the trajectory of Cash Converters. They're on a business and digital transformation, moving from primarily second-hand goods into personal finance. And with the digital transformation, lucky, you were the CEO of the Interactive Advertising Bureau. How are you placed to help them in this journey?
So my remit encompasses the brand, and it really, when you look at Cash Converters, its heritage is from WA. It is international and national in its footprint, and it needs to evolve. So we're on a business transformation. We've got a new CEO led by Mark Reed. He has got a new leadership team, and we have a remit to drive that. Our focus and priority is becoming, on the personal finance side, the most responsible personal finance lender, and at the same time, second-hand retail goods. So it's a very unique business, and I think that's where having a bit of a diverse background in being able to look at not just customer and digital, but look at it from that business side to evolve the business. So how do you evolve that brand, which has 34 years of history, born and bred here in WA, for new customers? How do you look at the customer and ensure that you've got the customer at the centre of everything you do? And then the digital platforms and evolving those. So I think what I bring, having had a range of roles in the past, is that background to bring the business lens and a holistic view. And I think working across a range of brands, from a Nike to a Nokia to an Amex, gives you that fresh lens that you need.
And how difficult do you think it is moving from one category, second-hand goods, to what could be an adjacent category, I mean, cash converters into personal finance. How
we
hard is
always
that?
were in that, and I think that's a challenge. Everyone knows cash converters. We have 89% brand awareness, so it is a brand that is known. What it's known for is the challenge. So it's about taking it from awareness to consideration for new categories, and so that's where we've taken really a product-led focus, because we've got personal finance, we also have pawnbroking, and then we have the second-hand goods and retailers. We have about 150 stores across Australia. So how do you make that fresh and relevant for customers of today is the challenge.
Right. And Chris, I mean, talking about adjacent categories, I don't know if I can stretch this, but you've come from running a sporting code. You've been called out as the architect of the Big Bash League, obviously a phenomenal success in hindsight, and you're now running a sporting stadium. What is your experience from running the sporting code that you're able to bring to a sporting stadium?
Well, apart from the obvious of having played sports or put on sports or played in a number of different stadiums around the country and getting a pretty good insight as to how to run a stadium from that experience, again, it's about the fan. I mean, Big Bash League was created to fix a product problem that Cricket Australia had at the time, and primarily kids and mums not liking the sport, and in fact, in some cases, really hating the sport because it was perceived to be boring and slow in a sport that their grandparents played. To come into a stadium where, again, we've got to create a fan experience. So this has been about creating stories that people understand and can engage with, and Big Bash League was one, bringing a stadium to life is another.
Right. And from adjacent categories to totally new categories, there was no bike dash cam category before you thundered onto the scene. And I think a really interesting start, and maybe more companies will have this start, you launched on Kickstarter, and I'm interested to understand what prepares you for the running of a startup. You said you've run a number of them now. Are they all different? Do you have to start again? Or is there some sort of hard lessons that you make sure you don't learn again?
Oh, I think the lessons are pretty similar all the time, just they manifest themselves in different ways. This is an interesting one for me. Traditionally, I've come in much earlier to help them evolve and grow. This one, as you mentioned, was a Kickstarter platform originally, which is really, people think it's an equity raising platform. It's not, it's a pre-sales platform where you pitch an idea, people look at it, they either engage or they don't engage, they give you the money, and hopefully they get a product at the end of it. That's where this product came from. Then it's moving from a Kickstarter environment where it's very loose into a customer-focused consumer electronics goods in a category that doesn't exist. There is no category. We are the only people in the category. So I don't think anything quite prepares you for that. But the same rules apply. It's looking about analysing what the customer wants, getting clear about what your message is, getting clear about what your product development pathway looks like, and pitching it at the right price through the right channels.
Right. And if I look at the cycling equipment, especially the top end, it's really dominated out of the States and EU. I mean, those are the companies. How does an Australian and WA company actually stand out in that?
With great difficulty, actually. The tyranny of distance is pretty hard for us. We design our product, we scope our product here. It's the mechanical component of it's done here. All the electronics are obviously done in China and Hong Kong, and we distribute from Hong Kong. So, big bit of water between us and there, which makes it pretty difficult. But, there's pretty proven pathways to go down. It's a very old industry itself, cycling is an industry. So it's just a matter of working out where you fit in that, sort of a more modern environment, and then hanging on for the ride.
Yeah, I mean, you're cycling an old industry. I think stadiums are an even older industry, but you're younger than that startup because you only launched in January. I mean, what's the pros and the cons of legacy, some incredible stadiums, lots of heritage, versus a totally new proposition, get to write it from scratch?
Well, I think it gives you a chance to start again. It gives you a chance to start again in terms of the infrastructure and making sure that you've got a stadium that's using the best of modern design to bring fans closer to the game and give them a greater experience, because you're always competing with a 100-inch the high-definition television at home, and a beer in the fridge is a hell of a lot cheaper, to be frank. And so you've got to get people an experience that gets them out of the house into the stadium seat. So being able to create an entirely new experience with all the best that's around it is fantastic. But we're also very conscious of the legacy that stadiums like Domain Stadium here, Subiaco Oval, or the WACA have provided. And we want to bring the memories that people have of those experiences to encourage them to come and have those experiences again, because we're all about creating shared experiences for fans, whether they be concert fans or sports fans. So those, very conscious of those legacies, and there is elements of those legacies in the stadium, but the stadium's also been built with space to create new history. And a lot of the places, if you walk around the corporate areas, there's empty display cabinets that in other stadiums would be full of memorabilia. Ours are waiting for that memorabilia to be created. We're looking to get Ed Sheeran's T-shirt from his first concert. We've got a few shirts from the first cricket match and the first footy game, those sort of things. But we're always creating, and people are always creating new stories that they experience with their friends and family in stadiums, and we're just wanting to reflect that.
Right, and then Alice, you talked about the legacy of cash converters. Is that a help or a hindrance with your new journey, going into categories that yes you were in but you're not particularly well known for? It's
a bit of both. There is a history, and that is what it is, and moving forward with that focus on responsible lending. So we have incredibly loyal customers who love us. They love us and we love them. At the same time, we need to evolve and bring in those new customers. And it's really interesting when you say the term cash converters, what it brings to mind for people, and making people now realise the responsible lending, the amazing jewellery and second-hand goods opportunity. And I think in many respects we were a little before our time. And when you look at now, when people are talking about pre-loved, we've been doing the recycling and upcycling for a very long time. Now it's kind of connected on. So it is about understanding your customer, absolutely, but also looking to new customers, and that is part of the journey. It will take some time, but I think when you look at the internal brand and our customer engagement program and looking at how much our customers really support us and love us, how do you get that story out to the rest of the market where people have some preconceived notions which may have been based on the past, but there is a future.
Right, and that idea of getting the story out. I'm looking at this big ditch of water that you have between you and the majority of your customers. What does marketing look like? How do you get your story out to beyond the base of Kickstarter? I can imagine fervid cyclists, wanting that latest bit of shiny tech on their bike, but you have to have moved beyond that. How do you get your story out? What does communications and marketing mean for Cycliq?
Yeah, well, as you rightly said, the first people that adopted our product are probably referred to in the industry as all the gear and no idea. So they have to have the latest trinket. That's a significant market, and it's a cashed-up market. But our real market is the commuter. That's the big market. And it's a completely different distribution model in many ways, and it's a completely different message you're giving to them. This lot are committed, they love it, they're into it. The other lot, and e-bikes are driving that as well, they're doing it for economic reasons, for time reasons. It's not done for pleasure. They might get pleasure afterwards. So that's a challenge for us because they don't go into traditional cycling shops. They're not rummaging through social posts that they follow or anything else like that. So that's being driven probably more by an awareness campaign, and you probably couldn't have helped see in Australia the 1 metre, the dual lane argument that's been going at the moment. So we've leveraged that pretty hard at the moment to get our message out there about there's dash cams for bikes out there.
Right. So are you saying that PR leads the charge, advertising just that step too far right now for a brand in its infancy?
The advertising works really well for that initial market. Right. So in the UK, we've got 37% brand awareness. For a startup, that's pretty good.
Wow.
But they're committed. It's the other people that don't know we exist. So getting the concept of there's a dash cam for your bike, front and rear out there, I think PR and sort of a bit of guerrilla marketing is a more efficient way for us to go. Challenge is to get that from Australia and see if we can transport that model globally.
Stay with us. After the break, we've got plenty more from the Perth edition of Marketing Dividends. Welcome back. I'm James Hier, and this is Marketing Dividends. Our panel is Alice Manners, Chief Digital Marketing and Product from Cash Converters, Chris Singleton, Executive Chairman of Cycliq, and Mike McKenna, CEO of Optus Stadium. Let's see what they have to say. All WA-based companies and executives. I mean, WA, from the height of the mining boom to where it is now, we have a lot of clients here, and they're finding it really hard going. I'm interested in what marketing's role is in this type of environment.
Well, she hadn't picked me to ask that question. Look, I think marketing is about getting people excited about a product, regardless of what it is, and that gives people a chance to have a choice about what they do with their disposable income. And right at the moment, it's limited. I mean, we're selling a product at the moment that we're struggling at the higher price points, and that is not a problem elsewhere in the country for the very similar product. So we've got to be very conscious of making sure that we price it right, as well as getting the message right. Because people are very conscious of how difficult it is to allocate discretionary spend right now, because you've got your eye on your back. So from that perspective, we've just got to do a better job of convincing people that this experience is better than something else they might want to spend their money on. But obviously they'll make that decision, and some people will choose to come to a sporting event or a concert or just come for a drink at one of the bars that we offer, but other people won't. We've just got to get more than our share.
Right, so you're fighting for share in what feels like a shrinking market.
Well, it's just a share of wallet. You know, there's only so much money, and people will rightly choose other things in their circumstances. But our job is to make sure they have the opportunity, that where we can, we price it right, so they can make a decision to come and share an experience with us. One of the things that in downtimes, fortunately, sport is one of those healthy things that people still seem to want to invest in.
Yeah.
There are some unhealthy ones that we suggest that they probably spend the money on differently, but at the end of the day, everyone makes their own call at this sort of a time. I mean, we're looking at the future now and feeling that things are starting to turn here in WA, and very much looking forward to being part of that. We're certainly very aware from all the communications, but the public, the business sector and the government, that we are part of the solution here. We've got to attract people into WA to our events in order for them to stay and spend their hard-earned cash in WA rather than spend it in New South Wales, Victoria or overseas. So being part of the tourism solution here in WA is very much on our radar.
Right, and I'd like to pick up on that a little bit later, because I think it's a really interesting dichotomy between what role you're actually playing. And Alice, I mean, and it is a tricky question. What role do you think that marketing has to play in the WA's current economic climate?
This is the perfect time for marketers. I mean, it's really where the rubber hits the road. And for me, being here now for 2 years and seeing that, the resource opportunity, but also the challenge that it's caused now or created, marketers now need to be accountable. Marketers have that opportunity to be more than TARPs and GRP and tie it back to business results. So from a cash converter's perspective, it's about understanding your customer. We didn't have a single customer view, so building that out from the back end, tying all our databases together. What I'm rolling out now is the tech stack at the front end from the marketing team to be able to personalise and talk to your customers. So that's one. Understanding the market, yes, retail's down, but digital is up. So revamping all of our digital assets. And we have a great an e-commerce platform which has a huge amount of potential. People don't know about it. User experience is a little bit clunky. Revamping that to launch for September. So understanding those touch points. Digital, and yes, I might have the digital background, but looking at that sweet spot between your search, social and content, understanding the opportunity programmatic has, asking the questions in this market between what's a transparent versus non-transparent trading desk. They're the questions marketers need to be asking now. And I think most importantly for me, it is about also being, and I learnt this on Amex many years ago, being brave enough to test and trial, allocating a certain amount of your budget to just testing and trialling, because I think this economy has been in a certain place for a while, and now you've got that opportunity to test and push it. We are national, but it's also then understanding the state splits, and we've been working with our agencies on an econ model to look at what is WA versus New South Wales and Victoria. So rubber hits the road, it's the right time now. Test and trial.
Right. And it's funny, all of those things you say, is it only in bad times, and
No.
it's not to be disrespectful,
No,
that
not at all.
marketers do their job? It's like all of those things you would want them to be doing all of the time.
Absolutely. And I think it's more, it was just easier before. I think now that accountability and the pressure that is on a business, but those fundamentals really always need to be there. And we've seen that pressure on the CMO over time as it evolves, and being able to always tie it back to the business and those priorities is critical.
Right. The tough question still exists, and it's coming to you. So where do you think marketing lies in helping this particular situation?
Well, if we sort of put the consumer product category aside for the time being and look at what has driven WA traditionally, which is resources and mining, it competes for capital. So no different for competing for a percentage of the punter's wallet. The mining and resources compete for capital, as does the engineering component of it. So marketers, even in small West Perth companies where there's 3 men and a dog in the place who might have an oil asset or a tenement somewhere, they have to market to get the capital to develop that idea. So at a really, really base level, marketing is intricately important to every facet that drives the West Australian economy, way before anything else. You pick a piece of turf, you've got an idea, you need money for it. You need to market that piece of turf, be it offshore, onshore. Same stuff applies to the products that we do.
Right. And that's, I mean, that's interesting, because it also applies to the marketing department inside the company, because it also has to get the revenue, the cash that it needs to be able to do its role. So just as it's the company is trying to draw in that sort of finance, so the internal marketing team is also trying to get that sort of attention. Yeah.
Look, all this stuff is sort of a matrix, and you just shift stuff around where you need to. So, and it's stages. So, as I said, you've got an idea, you get the money. In our idea, in our bit of the planet, the guys had an idea, they went to Kickstarter, they got some money in, and then they built it from there. But it wouldn't have been where it is without a solid marketing base.
Right. And that marketing, basically pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and building businesses from marketing, which I think is what Kickstarter has allowed certain companies to do. I mean, is that something that places like WA need to have more of?
Yeah, we sort of beat ourselves up a bit, but I think about marketing, but WA is really innovative in a lot of things, because you have to be a jack of all trades and a master of none here. You just can't be a specialist, because if you're a specialist, you die. It's as simple as that. Head off to London, UK, Sydney, if you want to be a specialist. WA, you need to know the complete gamut of things, and you need to be able to shift where you go, depending upon, it's a squeaky wheel, gets the most oil.
And that's it from the Perth edition of Marketing Dividends. Look out for us in mid-July, where we'll be back for the final episode in Canberra. I'm James Hier. Goodbye.